In the dense, fog-shrouded forests of West Virginia, a legend was born from a chilling, real-life encounter. It wasn't Bigfoot. It wasn't the Mothman. It was something else. Something far stranger. And for the residents of a small rural town, it was terrifyingly real. This is the story of the Flatwoods Monster. September 12th, 1952. The sun was setting over the sleepy town of Flatwoods, casting long shadows across the hills. A group of local boys, the May brothers and their friend Tommy Heyer, were playing football in their schoolyard. Suddenly, they saw something streak across the sky, a bright, pulsating object that seemed to descend behind a nearby hill on a local farmer's land. Curious and a little spooked, they decided to investigate. They ran to the May brothers' home, where their mother, Kathleen May, was initially skeptical. But the boys were so frantic, so insistent, that she agreed to go with them. She grabbed a flashlight, and along with a few other local kids and a National Guardsman named Eugene Lemon, they headed up the hill. As they climbed, a thick, acrid mist filled the air. It burned their eyes and throats, a metallic, sickening smell that made them feel nauseous. Their dog, which had run ahead, suddenly came yelping back, tail between its legs, and refused to go any further. That should have been their first warning. They reached the crest of the hill. In the beam of Kathleen's flashlight, they first saw two small, glowing lights, almost like animal eyes, perched in the branches of a large oak tree. But as she raised the light higher, the beam revealed what was holding them. It wasn't an animal. Towering over them, at least 10 feet tall, was a figure unlike anything they had ever seen. It had a dark, pleated base that seemed to hover just above the ground. Its body was a dark green, and its head was shaped like an ace of spades, glowing from within with a reddish light. Its eyes were non-human, greenish-orange and piercing, and from its head a low hissing sound emanated, echoing through the silent woods. The entire creature seemed to glide towards them, not walk. Panic erupted. The group screamed and scrambled, tumbling down the hill in a desperate flight for their lives. They didn't stop until they reached the safety of the Mays' home, where they frantically called the local sheriff. When Sheriff Robert Carr and a local reporter, Elise Stewart Jr., arrived, the group was in a state of shock. They were visibly terrified, some on the verge of hysteria. The sheriff and the reporter went up the hill themselves. They didn't see the monster, but they did report a lingering, repulsive metallic odor that clung to the air. They also found strange tracks on the ground and a patch of flattened, disturbed grass where the group said the creature had been. In the hours and days that followed, many of the witnesses became physically ill. They suffered from vomiting, irritation of the nose and throat, and convulsions. Kathleen May's symptoms were so severe she required medical attention. The story exploded. News reporters from across the country descended on the tiny town of Flatwoods. The Air Force was called in to investigate as part of Project Blue Book, their official study of UFOs. The official explanation was that the group had simply misidentified a meteor and an owl. They claimed the glowing object in the sky was a meteor that happened to be visible across 3 states that night. And the creature? They said it was just a large barn owl, perched on a branch, its natural features distorted by fear and the darkness. But the witnesses were adamant. How could a barn owl be 10 feet tall? How could it glide without legs? What about the horrible smell and the sickness that followed? And what about the strange tracks? The official explanation just didn't add up. For the people who were there on that hill, what they saw was no owl. It was a real, tangible entity, something alien and menacing. A. Lee Stewart Jr., the reporter who went to the scene that night, interviewed each witness separately. He found their stories to be remarkably consistent. He was a skeptic at first, but after smelling the strange odor for himself and seeing the genuine terror in their eyes, he became convinced they had encountered something truly unexplainable. Over the years, the Flatwoods Monster became a local legend, a piece of Appalachian folklore. But for the witnesses, it was never just a story. It was a traumatic event that changed their lives forever. They were ridiculed by some, but they never wavered in their account. Eugene Lemon, the guardsman, suffered from nightmares and long-term health problems he attributed to the encounter. So what was it? An extraterrestrial visitor? A being from another dimension that briefly crossed into ours? Or was it as the Air Force claimed, just a case of mass hysteria sparked by a meteor and an owl. The owl theory has some points. Spade-shaped head could resemble the facial disc of a barn owl. The glowing eyes fit. The hissing sound is also consistent with an agitated owl. The tall appearance could have been an illusion created by the owl being perched on a high branch, with its silhouette blending with the tree trunk below it. But this explanation feels too simple, too convenient. It dismisses the physical evidence, the smell, the sickness, the tracks and, most importantly, the sheer, unadulterated terror experienced by a dozen people. Could it have been some kind of experimental government craft or device? The area is not far from military installations. Perhaps a drone or probe malfunctioned and crashed, releasing some kind of chemical agent that caused hallucinations and sickness. This might explain the metallic smell and the physical symptoms, but it doesn't account for the specific, detailed description of the creature. The story of the Flatwoods Monster remains one of the most bizarre and compelling cases in the history of paranormal and UFO investigations. It's a classic close encounter of the third kind, where multiple credible witnesses had a direct confrontation with an unknown entity. A mystery that began on a dark, misty night in 1952, when a group of ordinary people stumbled upon something extraordinary, and their lives were never the same again.